Hey Radicals, welcome back to the Radically Rachel podcast. Today's episode is going to be a follow-up from last week's episode in which I met with Mandy, a former student of mine who lives in Minnesota. Minnesota, like many other places around the United States right now, is under siege. Under siege is originally a military term. But ironically enough, we are now being surrounded and attacked by the United States military. Minneapolis, Los Angeles, Chicago. Those are just a few major cities that are being terrorized by immigration officers at this time, by the U.S. government and military. And soon it's very likely that we will be able to add other cities to that list. Similarly to some of the content in last week's episode, I'm going to be taking on the lens of a teacher today. I was an elementary school teacher for 9 years, and so you can take the teacher out of the classroom, but you can't take the teacher out of who I am. It's just innate within me. I want to apply an elementary school teacher lens to the events that are happening today and to some historical events, some U.S. history as well. Teachers have a very sensitive nuance to walk with students, especially depending upon the grade level. But teachers have to explain big systems in simple and truthful ways. Teachers have to protect kids while telling the truth gently. And teachers are trained to notice patterns, analyze data, and recognize early warning signs before things spiral, whether that's behavior issues with a student, academic issues, other concerns. But teachers recognize early warning signs before things spiral out of control. So today I'm coming to this conversation as Miss Rachel. I'm coming at this conversation as someone who spent nearly a decade asking, what is this teaching people? Who feels safe here? Who doesn't? And what happens next if we don't course correct? That's exactly how history educators approach moments before major shifts. And sensitivity and awareness right now matters, especially with topics like displacement, civil rights, and government power. Teachers at the front line of their classrooms before the faces of children every day. They are modeling what good teaching always does. Without fear, not to shock their students, just presenting information with awareness, context, and compassion. There are moments in history when everything looks normal on the surface. People still go to work, kids still go to school, the news still scrolls by. And yet beneath the routine, something quietly shifts. Power begins moving faster than accountability. Fear starts shaping policy. And whole communities feel the weight of the government not as protection, but as pressure. Today, I want to talk about what's happening in parts of the United States, in cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, and Minneapolis, and why so many people are saying something about this feels familiar. Not familiar in a dramatic way, but familiar in a historical way. Because when you step back and look at the patterns, increased law enforcement, mass removals of groups of people, blurred lines of authority, communities organizing for protection. You start to hear the echoes of the Underground Railroad, the echoes of forced displacement, the Trail of Tears, echoes of moments when the law itself was used to decide who deserved safety and who didn't. This episode isn't about fear. It's about awareness. It's about how understanding how power has moved before so we can recognize it while it's moving now. And most importantly, it's about remembering that history doesn't usually repeat overnight. It shifts slowly, quietly, one policy at a time. A few moments ago, I said that there were moments in history where everything looks normal. People still go to work. People still go to school. The news scrolls by. But right now, we are facing a moment in history where actually nothing looks normal. People are not going to work. People's daily lives are being disrupted. Kids are not going to school. Schools are shutting down in fear for ICE agents storming their playgrounds. Kids being pepper sprayed on the way home, getting off the bus, being chased by ICE agents through their neighborhoods. And yet the news still scrolls by. But what matters right now in this moment is that you don't look away, that you keep watching, that you keep your eyes on Minnesota, that you keep your eyes on Chicago, you keep your awareness tuned in to the people in your community. We need people not to just use critical thinking skills that keeps getting tossed around in the media. You need to be a critical thinker. Actually, how about people listen to their hearts? Tune into your heart space. What is your heart telling you right now? Feels good. What feels good? Do you feel good seeing children being terrorized? Do you feel good knowing that there are babies being born in detention centers and mothers are being forced to pay $40 a day for formula to feed their babies? Do you feel good about that? I know that there are a lot of people right now who continue to not watch the news. They continue to put their head in the sand, and maybe things aren't impacting them yet, or maybe their privilege has them feeling like they're really on the outside of this whole thing, and it's not really about them. Or maybe you're feeling like, I really can't do a whole lot. That's not true. We need everybody to wake up. We need everybody to play their part. So I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in these cities, and I want to create some parallels here. I want to help you understand the pattern that is happening. So in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, the Trump administration ran a large-scale operation called Operation Metro Surge, and that began December 1st, 2025. Thousands of federal immigration and law enforcement personnel have made thousands of arrests. Most of those arrests, almost all of those arrests, are not people with criminal backgrounds. They are not people who were doing anything unlawful. These people were citizens going about their day, going to work, going to school, existing. People are being profiled and arrested and confronted just because of the color of their skin. And we've seen the Minnesotan community stand up and show up for their neighbors loudly, notifying people when they're seeing agents, texting each other, phone tree style, getting whistles, filming, showing up for one another. They're not hiding out. And people are protesting, as we have the right to do. We have the right for peaceful protest. I really believe that the American government, the U.S. government, has been trying to incite a riot in Minnesota. I think that this police presence and ICE presence in Minnesota is just a tactic that the administration is using to try to incite a riot so that they can invoke the right to call and declare martial law. And after the blatant murders of Renee Good on January 7th and Alex Pretti on January 24th, both of which were just minutes away from where George Floyd was killed in 2020. Can you imagine what this community has been through? Can you imagine what these people have been through? Multiple times the government has failed them. Multiple times the government has come in and attacked regular people who were not breaking any laws. And many people in Minnesota and the authorities have complained about the limited federal cooperation and that there's been no investigations into these shootings. And these families, this community, they deserve justice. And now it's mid-February, and we've been told that things are winding down in Minnesota, but that a small security force would remain. And we now have seen those troops, those agents now reappear in Chicago. They're back to the Chicagoland area. Chicagoland had a huge ICE presence around Halloween. I remember feeling afraid for the children that are trick-or-treating. I specifically was working in Chicago myself around that time, and I was within minutes of a situation where ICE rolled up on a school when school was getting out, and they were tear gassing people. There were lots of children caught in this display. So the Chicago mayor, Brandon Johnson, he issued an executive order called ICE on Notice at the end of January 2026. And he's asking all Chicago police departments to document any misconduct that they're seeing by these federal immigration agents. They want to preserve any evidence they can, body cam footage. They really would like to create pathways to prosecute anyone that they can. We need accountability. We need these federal agencies to investigate themselves. Chicago, like Minnesota, has created a huge rapid response. There's a lot of education and information coming out about knowing our rights. Film, record, document. We are allowed to do so. But what we're seeing now is people peacefully documenting and recording situations who are now being brought into the situation merely because they're documenting it and they're trying to get proof. I've seen video footage of people who in the Chicagoland area are commuting to work, commuting to school, going about their business. They've gotten caught up in a neighborhood where there's a bunch of ICE activity, and then agents are pulling people from cars, not requesting documents, not requesting papers, but straight up arresting people, arresting citizens and detaining citizens for days on end. There's been numerous accounts of citizens who have been detained. And these are not moments and situations where it's like, well, we just didn't know. Oh, we just didn't know if they were a citizen or not. These are moments where people are literally being abducted off the streets. Citizens being taken. We also have a large number of people who have been taken and put into these detention centers and their records have gone missing. Where are those people? Those people deserve due process the same as anyone else. They're human. Their families have a right to know where they are and if they've been deported, where to and when. It's not okay for the government to delete the records. And that, to me, would cause a lot of fear and concern to wonder, are these people alive? What has our government done to these people? Earlier in 2025, the National Guard was deployed to Los Angeles, and there were lots of immigration raids. ICE agents were storming into courts and abducting people after their immigration hearings. And similarly to Minnesota, I believe that our government is trying to incite a riot or trying to create an event at which they could declare martial law, which we don't want to happen because that would inhibit us from having elections. Now, I hope you are connecting the dots for yourself. And if some of the things I've said today you've not heard, you're not aware of, it would be in your best interest to start going to alternative news sources. We should not be trusting what the mainstream outlets are telling the mass media about these events. You can't trust them. We're not seeing these agencies have any accountability. No one is holding them accountable because they are the agency that would. Our government is causing harm and mayhem. Our government is creating this discourse, this divide. So here are some of those connections. Here are some of those dots that I hope that you will see across these places. There is a huge federal escalation happening right now. There is a huge amount of federal visibility, bigger presence, more stops, more arrests, more public confrontation, more weapons. We are having conflict accountability. Who investigates when harm happens? Especially when federal agencies control the evidence. We're now seeing these documentation orders, right? Like, we have to carry our passports. You better have your papers at all times. We can't walk to the grocery store, go to school without having documentation to show at any time. What does that sound like to you? What does that echo? What does that make you think of? There are some major historical parallels happening right now, echoing patterns that we've seen before. Abuse of the law, dehumanizing narratives, the removal or containment of groups of people, and community resistance. In second grade, students learn about Native Americans, and they learn about who was on this land first. They learn about the traditions and culture of Native people. Then in third grade, students learn about the 13 colonies and Christopher Columbus, who set out to discover a new world. Guess what? He wasn't the first one here. Then those students learn about how Christopher Columbus was a part of the mass eradication of Taino people. That whole part of history portraying a group of people as less human or less worthy of rights, and using force and policy to control the land, to control labor and movement. Dehumanizing groups of people, feeling like one group of people is more worthy than the other. In fourth grade, students study the Trail of Tears, and they learn about removal as policy. Removal or relocation of people being justified as lawful or necessary, even when it destroys families and communities. Who were here first? And that is where our country developed some of its mass detention and mass deportation frameworks, creating colonizing schools to strip people of their culture. And then in fifth grade, students learn about the Underground Railroad. They learn about how when the law itself becomes a tool of capture, how there are communities that build networks of protection, safe passage, sharing information, secret codes. And I know that my fifth grade students wrestled with that question. They looked around the classroom at their Black classmates, and I know each of them thought, I would never do that. I would help my friend out. I would never give them to a slave catcher. And then the last academic parallel that I'm going to make, and I'm sure you've been thinking it too. In middle school and high school, 8th grade students have to read the diary of Anne Frank. We have to read the diary of a girl who was hiding before she was found and held captive in a concentration camp under the Nazi regime. She was hiding because she was Jewish, and Jewish people were being abducted, taken to camps, and eradicated, murdered, mass murders. And I think it matters that we make this parallel right now because we don't know what's happening in these concentration camps. We know that records are being lost. We know that people don't have access to water, safe food. People aren't being given beds. People are sleeping on floors. Some of these detention centers, they don't have the systems to get a phone call. They're being denied their basic rights to connect with family or a lawyer or representation. There's a woman in the Dilley Detention Center in Texas who has a 2-month-old baby. She's not able to produce breast milk in this environment, of course, and it doesn't have access to clean drinking water to make breast milk. She has to purchase breast milk from the prison store, the commissary, but doesn't have free access to clean water to mix the breast milk for her baby. Can you imagine? Radicals, I don't really have much to say. Because at this point in history, at this point in time, I can't convince you that this is wrong. I can't convince you. You either feel it in your heart and soul, or you don't. And if you are someone who voted for this, or you voted and supported this administration, but you don't support this, make it known. Representation matters. We need everyone to use their heart, not their critical thinking skills. Use your heart. What I can say, radicals, is that we need to keep fighting the fight. We need to keep our eyes on these places. We need to keep our eyes on the real news, listening to the real stories. Don't look away. Don't be afraid. This government wants us to feel distracted. They want us to feel unsafe. They want us to feel this chaos and hysteria, and that is how they win. By making us weak with fear. So we need to unite. We need to be strong. We need to keep fighting. We need to keep fighting to create change at the very core of something. Stay radical.